Welcome to another deep dive. There's this old saying about the gold rush that, I don't know, it always stuck with me. Like when everyone is rushing out to the rivers with their pans.
Right, absolutely convinced they're going to strike it rich.
Exactly. But the people who actually end up making the most reliable fortunes, well, they aren't the prospectors at all.
Yeah, it's usually the people selling the shovels,
Yeah.
like the ones running the local hardware store.
The hardware store owners, yes. Because, I mean, they don't care who finds the biggest nugget or, whose claim completely busts. Everybody needs a shovel to even try. And today, you and I are going to unpack arguably the biggest technological gold rush of our lifetimes.
The explosion of artificial intelligence and the electric vehicle boom.
Right. Because we hear about the cloud and generative AI constantly, right? Just nonstop. But what you might not realize is that the cloud isn't some invisible, weightless thing just floating in the sky. The cloud is heavy.
Oh, yeah. Very heavy.
It is deeply physical, and it is incredibly power hungry.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of heavy industry. And while the headlines are completely saturated with software startups and chip designers, we are taking our magnifying glass to the ultimate modern-day pickaxe seller.
Yep.
We have a massive stack of sources today, primarily focusing on the Q1 Fiscal 2027 earnings report and presentation from Argan Inc.
Right, and for those unfamiliar, Argan is, they're not writing software code.
Oh, far from it. No, they are a heavy infrastructure construction company.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mission for this deep dive is to decode how this relatively, under-the-radar firm is quietly putting up staggering financial numbers.
What's fascinating here is we're talking about a massive 50% year-over-year revenue jump.
Which is wild.
It's totally wild. And they're doing it simply by building the massive power plants that keep all of this digital technology running.
So to understand how a heavy construction company suddenly sees a 50% spike in revenue, we have to look at the macro picture first. Because they aren't just, selling more of the same thing. The entire world is fundamentally changing how it consumes energy.
Yeah, in their presentation, Argan lays out this massive shift in global energy demand. They label it the electrification of everything.
The electrification of everything. I like that.
Right, and the underlying numbers driving that shift are just intense. Their presentation highlights that global electricity demand is expected to jump 25% by the year 2030.
Wow.
And if we zoom out to 2050, we're looking at a 78% increase globally.
Okay, those are massive percentages, but let's ground that in reality. What is actually pulling all that power?
Well, a huge portion of it is data centers. I mean, these are the literal engines of the AI revolution. If we zero in on just the United States, data center power demand alone is projected to nearly triple.
Triple?
Yeah, triple to 134.4 gigawatts by the year 2030.
Okay, wait, let's pause right there. Gigawatt is one of those terms we hear in, sci-fi movies, but we rarely put it into context. For the listener trying to visualize this, what does 134.4 gigawatts actually mean?
Think of it this way. A single gigawatt is roughly enough electricity to power about 750,000 average homes.
So 1 gigawatt is basically a mid-sized city.
A whole city, yeah. And data centers in the U.S. alone are going to need over 134 of those by 2030.
That is just hard to wrap my head around.
It's staggering. But here is the critical tension in Argan's presentation. At the exact same time that we need to triple our power output for these data centers, there are 104 gigawatts of aging power plants scheduled for retirement by 2030.
Mostly, older coal and early generation gas plants?
Exactly.
Wait, I'm trying to do the math here. We need to add an entire fleet of new power generation for AI, but we are simultaneously shutting down 104 gigawatts of our existing grid. Isn't that a recipe for a massive blackout?
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it sounds like trying to swap out an airplane's engine while it's currently cruising at 30,000 feet.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You are actively dismantling the old propulsion system while demanding the plane fly twice as fast. And that dangerous, highly complex gap is exactly where Argan thrives.
Ah, okay.
Because this transition requires building the right kind of power right now to prevent the entire system from just stalling out.
Okay, but I see a lot of debate in these sources about what the right kind of power actually is. Obviously, there is a massive push for renewables, but Argan seems heavily focused on natural gas. Why is that the solution for this specific gap?
Well, from Argan's strategic perspective, they view natural gas-fired power plants as the ideal bridge. It comes down to something grid operators call baseload power.
Base load.
Right.
Yeah.
So renewables like wind and solar are absolutely crucial components of the future grid. And Argan builds those too, by the way,
Yeah.
but they are intermittent.
Because the wind stops blowing and the sun sets?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But an AI data center spending millions of dollars to train a new massive language model, I mean, it cannot be turned off when a storm rolls in.
Right. It needs juice 24/7.
It requires a constant, massive, unbroken stream of electricity. So Argan is positioning itself as the firm that can rapidly construct these ultra-efficient combined cycle natural gas plants to ensure the grid doesn't collapse.
Okay, let's unpack combined cycle because I saw that term heavily featured in their project list. How is that different from the legacy gas plants we're, currently retiring?
So in a traditional simple cycle power plant, you burn fuel, it spins a turbine to create electricity, and the massive amount of heat generated just goes right up the exhaust stack and into the atmosphere.
Just wasted energy.
Total waste. But a combined cycle plant captures that 1,000-degree exhaust heat, routes it into a massive boiler to create steam, and uses that steam to spin a second entirely separate turbine.
Oh, wow. So you are getting two sources of electricity for the price of one fuel burn.
You capture vastly more energy from the exact same amount of natural gas. I mean, it is far more efficient and burns much cleaner than the legacy coal plants being retired. But, and this is the kicker, building a facility that harnesses 1,000-degree exhaust and high-pressure steam at a massive scale is incredibly difficult.
Which brings us to how they are actually capitalizing on this difficulty.
Well-
Because this macro demand, this desperate need to keep the airplane flying, isn't just a theoretical projection for the year 2030. We have their Q1 2027 financials in front of us, and this demand is showing up aggressively in their current bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. The numbers they reported for the quarter ending April 30, 2026 are frankly eye-opening for a heavy construction firm. They hit a record $291 million in revenue for the quarter.
Which is that staggering 50% increase up from $194 million in the same quarter last year.
Yeah, and they aren't just taking on more projects at a discount to boost their top line either. They are actually becoming more profitable on the work they do. Their gross profit margins improved from 19% up to 21%.
That's a solid jump.
It really is. And that operational efficiency trickled all the way down to their diluted earnings per share, which is essentially the bottom line profit generated for every share of stock.
Yeah.
That number more than doubled year over year, jumping from $1.60 to $3.24.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. I noticed their adjusted EBITDA reached $56.4 million, representing a 19.4% margin. For a listener who doesn't spend their day, looking at income statements, why is a 19.4% EBITDA margin notable here?
Well, EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It is a really clean way to look at how much pure cash the core operations of the business are generating, just stripping away all the accounting noise.
Right.
So in heavy infrastructure where cost overruns, weather delays, and supply chain issues are notoriously common, hovering near a 20% margin is a massive indicator of highly disciplined project management.
But I want to direct our attention away from the income statement and over to their balance sheet. Because when you look at the financials of a heavy construction company, you kind of expect to see a mountain of debt.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, they need to buy cranes, massive amounts of steel, and hire thousands of specialized workers. But Argan's balance sheet genuinely stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah, they reported $974 million in cash equivalents, and investments, nearly $1 billion in liquidity, and their total debt, zero.
Zero debt. But wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. In business school, they teach you that leverage is actually a good thing. Using debt allows a company to grow faster than they could using just their own cash.
Yeah.
Why is having zero debt considered such a massive weapon for Argan? Doesn't it mean they are, leaving growth on the table?
Well, in a lot of industries, leverage absolutely makes sense. But in heavy infrastructure construction, zero debt unlocks something called bonding capacity.
Bonding capacity, okay.
Right. When Argan bids on a billion-dollar power plant, the utility company hiring them requires a surety bond. It's essentially a massive insurance policy that guarantees Argan will finish the job no matter what goes wrong.
Because if a construction company goes bankrupt halfway through building a power plant, the utility company is left with a half-finished concrete shell and no electricity.
Exactly the nightmare scenario. So if a construction firm has a weak balance sheet loaded with high-interest debt, the bonding companies either won't insure them at all or they will charge astronomical premiums.
I see.
But because Argan is sitting on nearly $1 billion in cash with zero debt, Their bonding capacity is virtually unlimited. The insurance companies look at them as the safest bet in the room.
Which means Argan can bid on the absolute largest, most complex projects on the planet, while highly leveraged competitors are just locked out of the room.
Exactly. It also gives Argan's management the ultimate luxury in business, the ability to say no. When a construction company is drowning in interest payments, they are often forced into a desperation cycle.
Taking bad jobs just to stay afloat.
Yeah, they bid on highly risky, low-margin projects just to keep cash coming in the door to pay the bank.
Yeah.
Argan doesn't have a bank breathing down its neck. They only take on projects where they know they can maintain that 19.4% margin.
Okay, so they have zero debt, they have unlimited bonding capacity, and they have the luxury of choosing only the best projects. What are they actually winning? Because while a record Q1 is looking in the rearview mirror, their project backlog is the crystal ball showing us their future.
And that crystal ball is very full. Argan is currently sitting on a $2.8 billion project backlog that is fully committed by customers, and 92% of this backlog supports what they call the electric economy.
Right, breaking that 92% down, I have it here. 79% is natural gas, 13% is renewable, and 8% is industrial.
Yeah, and if we look at the specific projects making up that $2.8 billion, the sheer scale of what they are building is staggering. Their power segment completely dominates, making up 78% of their Q1 revenues.
Right.
They are currently building the CPV Basin Ranch Energy Center, which is a 400,350 megawatt combined cycle power plant in Texas. They're also building the Sandow Lakes Power Station, another 1,200 megawatt gas-fired plant, also in Texas.
So what does this all mean for their day-to-day operations? Because we talked earlier about a gigawatt being enough for a mid-sized city.
Yeah.
These are single facilities putting out 1.2, 1.3 gigawatts. $1 billion in Texas gas plants sounds like a logistical mountain. Take us down to the ground level. What does building a 3,350 megawatt power plant actually look like?
Well, it is a logistical mountain that takes years to climb. You are coordinating millions of specialized labor hours. You aren't just pouring concrete. You are dealing with massive gas turbines that weigh hundreds of tons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. These turbines have to be transported across the country on specialized multi-axle trailers, requiring roads to be reinforced and bridges to be braced, literally just to get them to the site.
That's insane. And once they're on site,
they have to be lifted by some of the largest cranes in the world and placed onto foundations with millimeter precision. Then you are connecting miles of high-pressure piping that has to withstand intense heat and stress alongside vast, complex electrical switchyards.
okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, there are only a very limited number of firms on the entire planet with the engineering and project management expertise to execute a project like that without a catastrophic failure.
So the sheer terrifying complexity of the job is actually Argan's competitive advantage.
It creates a deeply entrenched moat. A new startup funded by venture capital can't just decide tomorrow to disrupt the energy market by building a 1,300 megawatt plant in Texas.
Right. The customer won't trust them with $1 billion.
And the bonding companies certainly won't insure them.
But I see in the sources that they aren't entirely reliant on these massive U.S. gas plants. They also have a 300 megawatt biofuel plant in Ireland called the Tarbert Next Generation Power Plant, and they recently finished a 405 megawatt Midwest solar project in Illinois, which the notes emphasize they completed ahead of schedule.
That diversification is key. By mixing steady, massive, multi-year natural gas projects in the U.S. with renewable solar projects and international biofuel plants, they insulate themselves against regional or sector-specific downturns.
Makes sense.
If the solar market cools off, they have years of natural gas backlog to work through.
So we've established they have an enormous pile of cash, a pristine zero-debt balance sheet, and a $2.8 billion backlog locked down. The final piece of the puzzle we need to look at is capital allocation. With all this cash coming in, what exactly is management doing with this growing war chest?
Well, the way a management team chooses to deploy excess cash tells you a lot about their internal view of the company's future. The first thing Argan is doing is aggressively returning capital to their shareholders.
Yeah, the sources show they increased their share buyback program from $150 million to $200 million, and they extended that authorization all the way through January 2030.
Right.
They also paid a 50-cent quarterly dividend per share. The notes highlight that this marks 3 straight years of dividend increases, representing a 100% cumulative dividend increase since June of 2023.
When you look at those two actions together, doubling the dividend over 3 years and locking in a $200 million buyback until the end of the decade, That is a massive signaling mechanism to the market.
It essentially says they aren't just having a lucky quarter, they are forecasting intense long-term confidence in their future cash flows. They believe the money is going to keep rolling in year after year.
Exactly. But they aren't just handing all the profits back to investors. They're investing heavily in organic growth to make sure they can actually execute on that $2.8 billion backlog.
Right. They need the people to do the work.
Yeah, they are actively increasing headcount, bringing on more specialized engineers and project managers. And very notably, they are pouring capital into building a brand new fabrication facility in North Carolina, which they expect to complete in the third quarter of fiscal 2027.
Wait, I'm confused by this move. They are an infrastructure company, right? Their expertise is assembling these massive plants on site. Why divert valuable capital and management attention to building their own fabrication plant? Doesn't that distract from their core, highly profitable business of building power plants?
It sounds like a distraction, but it's actually a vital strategic move within their industrial segment. To give you some context, that industrial segment already grew to 20% of their Q1 revenue, bringing in $58 million.
Okay.
Building this North Carolina facility is all about supply chain control and vertical integration.
Meaning they want to own the process of making the parts, not just assembling them.
Consider the massive surge in global demand we talked about earlier. Everyone is trying to build data centers and power plants at the same time. When that happens, the supply chains for highly specialized industrial components get incredibly tight.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You do not want a billion-dollar power plant project delayed by 6 months, eating into your 19.4% profit margin, simply because a third-party supplier in another country is bottlenecked on delivering a critical pressure valve or steel tank.
So by building their own fabrication facility, they eliminate the middleman, they guarantee their own supply.
And they can sell those specialized components to the broader market. We can already see this strategy paying off. The earnings presentation highlights a recent $125 million contract Argan won specifically to fabricate thermal expansion and energy storage tanks for U.S. data centers.
Ah, right. Those tanks are necessary because data centers generate massive amounts of heat and require intense industrial-scale liquid cooling systems to keep the AI servers from literally melting down.
Yes. And the new North Carolina facility is being built to directly address this exact kind of soaring demand. Argan is essentially expanding their footprint. They're saying, we aren't just going to build the power plant that feeds the data center. We're going to manufacture the critical thermal components that go inside the data center itself.
Wow.
They're embedding themselves deeper and deeper into the physical reality of the AI build-out.
It is such a comprehensive strategy. I mean, they are attacking the electrification of everything from every possible angle. Let's bring all this together for the listener. Argan is sitting perfectly at the intersection of a historic infrastructure transition. On one side, we have an aging, fragile power grid with 104 gigawatts of legacy power shutting down.
Right.
On the other side, we have the explosive, unyielding growth of artificial intelligence and electric vehicles demanding more electricity than human beings have ever consumed.
And standing right in the middle of that supply and demand collision is Argan. They are armed with a $2.8 billion backlog, a pristine, debt-free balance sheet, giving them virtually unlimited bonding capacity, and a proven operational model that is currently growing revenues by 50% while expanding profit margins.
So the next time you were reading a headline about a revolutionary new AI model, or, you see a sleek new electric vehicle silently rolling down the street, I want you to remember that the digital cloud isn't just floating in the sky. It is bolted to the ground. Your digital life runs on physical steel, miles of high-pressure pipes, and massive natural gas turbines built by the heavy construction crews of companies like Argan.
But looking at the sheer physics of this transition raises an incredibly important question. We know the AI data center demand is tripling by 2030. We know the old legacy plants are retiring right now. Argan is executing flawlessly today. But when you consider the permitting, the engineering, and the sheer logistical mountains required to build these 1,000 megawatt power plants,
You have to wonder if we can actually build fast enough.
exactly. Are we physically capable as a society of constructing these massive facilities quickly enough to prevent a hard bottleneck in AI development?
That might just be the most important question of the decade. Will the speed of software development ultimately outpace the speed of steel construction? Or will heavy infrastructure firms like Argan eventually become the absolute gatekeepers to the next era of technological progress? Because right now the gold rush is accelerating faster than anyone predicted, and the folks holding the pickaxes might just dictate how fast the prospectors are allowed to dig. Something for you to ponder until next time.